As a win for women, Nakuru County has elected 2 women at the top leadership of that county. Susan Kihika is the Nakuru County Governor-elect, while Tabitha Karanja is the Senator-elect. And when DP Ruto, right now the President-elect, was announced by the IEBC on Monday, majority of locals there broke into dance celebrating that win. But yesterday, Raila Odinga, who is the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate, did reject the results. Let's now get reactions from Nakuru County, where UDA got a lot of support. We are now joined by my colleague Dalmas Sakali. Good morning, Dalmas. It's nice to speak with you. What are some of the reactions, especially on what Raila said yesterday?
Good morning, Purity. As you've just indicated, Nakuru County, I will say no other county has actually cultivated and put into practice women leadership and women empowerment issues like Nakuru County. Like you've mentioned, of course, you're talking about a governor-elect who is a lady. We're talking about a woman rep, of course, who is a lady, a senator who is a lady, and 3 out of 11 members of parliament in Nakuru County who are ladies, which is, of course, a milestone. And of course, as you've indicated, celebrations after celebrations were here, but I would say they didn't last that much due to the fact that Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga came forth yesterday and rejected the results that were announced by IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati. And of course, there are so many questions that are being asked right now. The issue of was Chebukati in order to announce the results with more than half of his commission or commissioners being in protest, amongst other questions in that line. And even before I talk to a lawyer, a constitutional lawyer who is with me here, normalcy is back in Nakuru City with people moving around, doing their businesses, doing their hustles like it has been the norm before the general elections. And of course, they are eager to move forward. Allow me to talk to Steve Biko, who is a constitutional lawyer here in Nakuru City, to just get some of his views as regards the rejection of results by Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga, and which avenues does he have, and of course the Azimio brigade going forward, even as they are seeking what they call justice. Steve Biko, good morning.
Good morning to you.
First of all, what is your reaction towards the rejection of results by Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga yesterday?
It's good for good order in the country, instead of getting to the streets and protesting through the unorthodox means, but instead it was an engagement in a civil discourse, a constitutional discourse before the court. We must encourage dispute resolution before courts, as opposed to being allowed to go to take protest on the street, which of course usually generate a lot of emotions, animosity and tension in the country. It's advisable. I agree with the option of going to court, as opposed to one, conceding if there's a genuine grievance that he feels should be addressed. And secondly, that option also helps us to bolster election laws in this country towards strengthening our constitution and also strengthening our legal order. This will help future generations, not just Raila Odinga, not we at the moment, but it helps illuminate the entire electoral process by having a further ventilation of these issues before a neutral forum where all parties are given a chance to address their concerns. I think it's much invited.
From where you sit, do you think he and the Azimio brigade as a whole have enough grounds to reject the results that were announced by Wafula Chebukati?
At a glance, I may not speak much into the merits of the case because I'm yet to see the grounds. But looking peripherally from the concerns raised over the election period, there are legitimate concerns, more particularly now, the disagreement by 4 of the commissioners. Ordinarily, if the election was as clean as pretended by the other side, there would be consensus. There have been consensus before. It is a different position now, with 4 of the commissioners already expressing their views. We may disavow what they say based on our political persuasions or positions, but then the reality is there is a division. Once there is a division, legitimately then there should be a cause to worry about.
Another tough question, from where you sit, do you think Wafula Chebukati, the IEBC chair, was in order to announce the results even with the splitting amongst the commissioners?
Legally speaking, the chairman retains the power to pronounce and declare the presidential nominee and who has won. That is his mandate under Article 138 of the Constitution. However, for good order and hygiene, there ought to have been a more conciliatory approach and a more binding approach in terms of who is involved and to what extent there is consensus. Consensus builds admission and acceptance as compared to when there is a division between the parties. Then to that extent, he was right legally, but the optics of it would have required a consensus or an agreeable position amongst all. It then paints a divided house, and a divided house in an emotive country, in a very partisan election, then builds ground for disagreement and disavowing the election.
Mm-hmm. Assuming the case is taken to the Supreme Court, do you think the Deputy President, of course the current Deputy President, who is the President-elect, will be amongst the respondents?
The first respondent in this case is the returning officer for the presidential election. In normal petitions, as before 2013, Raila Odinga won, and that was petition number 5, and Raila Odinga second in 2017. In all those petitions, the IEBC chairman, the first one was Isaac Hassan, the second one was Chebukati himself, and the IEBC. Those are the first two respondents. The next set of respondents are the declared candidates, because the impact of their declaration has an effect on whoever has been declared. That is the beneficiary of the process that is being fouled or being contested. So inevitably, if a hearing were to be done in their absence, then they would have been denied a chance to be heard. That goes contrary to Article basic access to justice, and then the right of fair trial under Article 50. You would have denied the person a right to be heard. So grant Ruto a chance to come and defend his win if he won legitimately, and IEBC chairman as well as the IEBC as the corporate entity involved as the first and the second respondent. Ruto and Gachagua will then become the third and the fourth respondents. Legally so, they are the proper parties to be sued because they are the beneficiaries of the declaration.
Mm-hmm. Of course, there are also questions around what is supposed to happen when. I'll allow the advocate here to actually guide us on the timelines. Maybe what is supposed to happen after how many days, what is supposed to follow what, Biko?
Upon election on the 9th, the counting and the tallying process takes time. The law allows the IEBC chairman to declare the said election results within 7 days. So it was within time. That's why there is a complaint on the other side that why didn't he wait until the 16th to declare the results so that it takes a tally of all the stations that were still not yet tallied or counted. The second one is that after declaration, 7 days thereafter, upon the gazettement of the president-elect and his deputy, which was done yesterday, then the timeline commences in count, and that is 7 days thereafter, to which extent the Supreme Court, via its registry at Forodha House in Nairobi, has explained and given notices to the effect of filing, and which we pray is within 7 days. So 7 days from yesterday, that takes us to Tuesday next week, when the petition should have been filed, thereafter placed before the duty court, that is the Supreme Court itself, via its registrar. Directions be taken substantively before all the judges sitting, then 14 days within which to hear and determine the petition. Therein, directions would involve services upon the parties, the respondents involved, all of them. There will also be room to allow interested parties to be joined. This election is not just about the Azimio side and the Kenya Kwanza side. It also involves other participants, like HILOG, for instance. NGO, non-governmental organizations will be involved, the civil society groups, and other candidates probably, like Wajakoya professor, as well as there is Mwaure as a council, and then there is possibility of the bishop, what was his name? The bishop musician, presidential candidate who was bad. There is also a petition already before that court to bar William Ruto from being confirmed or being sworn in by Kibe Mungai. all those may be sought to be joined to this presidential petition. So then it will depend on the directions taken before the Supreme Court.
Lastly, there have been discussions around mathematics. I mean, the 0.01 and 0.01%. Do you think it matters? And do you think the 4 commissioners have a point?
Regarding mathematics, as we talk about it, the entire election is all about figures. It's all about the percentages. Percentages are derivative of figures. That is the turnout, the valid votes cast, as well as the declared figures in respect of every candidate. So if a figure is deemed to have been earned irregularly, then it will be noted that those raises questions of quantity in the election. Okay. Then there is a second question under test to determine in an election petition, which is the qualitative aspect of the election. Qualitative aspect is an array of a number of issues, for instance, whether there was violence, whether there was voter suppression, whether there was intimidation, whether there was bribery. Those are qualitative aspects to the process. For the numbers now, what was declared, if there are disparities, then there will be tests to confirm whether these votes were legitimately cast or they were not accounted for, and that's why you see the concerns now being raised by the other commissioners. They're saying there are numbers here which have not been accounted for. Okay. That then gives the Azimio side a chance to interrogate those numbers, and the IEBC to account for those numbers, and the William Ruto side to defend those numbers as correct.
Okay. Steve Biko is an advocate of the High Court based here in Nakuru City, just sharing insights in the proceedings and what might happen going forward, even as Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga rejected the results announced by IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati.